In today's climate, people are looking for ways to de-stress themselves and find a way to be calm and blissful. Mindfulness has become more of a necessity than a luxury. And in today's show, we're going to be speaking to a special guest who's going to take us through what mindfulness is and how he uses it in his clinic. Hi, welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. This is Joey Buzzattle, and on today's show, we're going to be speaking to Rueben Lowe, who will be talking to us about mindfulness and ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. Ruben, how are you?
I'm great, thanks, Joe. Thank you so much for having me on. Really
No,
look forward to the conversation.
no, thank you. It's I've found you on LinkedIn and I reached out and thank you so much for saying yes to coming on the show. So before we start, do you want to just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Ruben. I have been a people person for a while. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was younger. I had no sense of direction when I was younger. I had quite bad behavioural reports from the schools. Um, I had attention problems. Wasn't diagnosed, but maybe nowadays I might well have been because, in the climate with today, like diagnosis, Um, but anyway, yeah, I am a people person because I then went into care work, and from there I branched out into psych nursing, and from doing psych nursing, I then became a practitioner in addictions. I did a postgrad in cognitive behavioral therapy and some other stuff that is relevant. And around 2005, I was lucky enough to do a workshop with someone called Mark Webster, who was a friend of Steve Hayes. And Steve Hayes is the founder of acceptance commitment therapy. And the workshop was really mind blowing, because it was all these experiential exercises, and it really gave you an insight into how the mind works and how our mind actually trips us up a lot of the time, and how our minds are not actually our friends a lot of the time, but they're not
Mm.
our enemy either. So fast forward from there, in I set up the first Act for Addictions group in the UK with Mark Webster, and then in 2010, I came out to Australia and went to an ACT World conference and met the therapy manager for HealthScope at the Melbourne clinic. And she said, if you've got this experience in ACT, we'd like to have you on board. And fast forward 10 years, I'm now the ACT programs coordinator at the day programs. It's one of the largest day programs in the Southern Hemisphere. And I also run deepening mindfulness sessions. I'm the founder of my own digital platform, Mindful Creation, and I have a little charity called Act On It, and I think that's how you found me.
Yeah.
And we're in the throes of creating a smartphone app, a free smartphone app for young people called Act On It, which is the same name as the charity.
So do you have time? It sounds like you're really busy. It sounds like you've got a very full life, which is so good. It's I get very excited when I interview people that have that rich life of helping and doing things. How did you actually like come across mindfulness, and how did you use it in your own life?
Um, Well, first off, do I have time? Look, I've had to learn. I've had to learn from this because, to be quite honest, I'm an optimist, and that is a blessing, but it's also a curse.
Mm.
So things that I think might take a few months actually take a few years, and that's been a really big thing for me. So I've kind of been working on these little projects for like 8 or 9 years, mindful creation and Act On It, thinking that, big things were going to happen and the app was going to be out in a few months and stuff like that. So yeah, I've had to create more space and have more of a balance and look after my health as well as move forward like this.
And has that been a hard thing to do, or have you sort of gone into that scope pretty easily?
No, it's been hard to do. In 2015, I didn't know what quite was wrong, but I actually had adrenal fatigue. So when you've kind of been doing what you want to do for 7 days a week, because the weekend is just the weekend and you can work on your project, right? When you keep pushing yourself in that way and your adrenal glands start to run low, your your adrenal glands are responsible for like 30 different hormones in your body, right? I'm
Mhm.
sure you will
It's
know.
so weird that you're saying this, and we'll talk about this later. But
Yeah,
in 2015, I had the same problem,
really.
but mine was a neurological problem. So yeah, we'll talk about that later because
Okay, great.
I
Yeah,
totally get the 7 days a week thing. I thought that I wasn't working. I thought I was just doing what I loved,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
but I abused my body, which I guess that's what you did as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it takes. I didn't know anything about it, and nor did my GP, right? So, um, yeah, I didn't know anything about it until I then read and learned and had some tests and stuff, and then I realized, yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta chill out.
Did mindfulness play a part for you in that chill out?
It definitely helped. Absolutely, hands down. Like, you know, mindfulness in its essence, no matter what point of connection, whatever your whatever your chosen anchor is, right? It can be one of the five senses, it could be the breath, it could be anything. But if you practice that gentle noticing when you're distracted and then coming back again, that soothes the nervous system, hands down. There are obviously other techniques. Mindfulness is about letting everything be. So if we're practicing mindfulness of the breath, it's about letting the breath come and go in that rhythm. But there are also other soothing techniques for the nervous system where you slightly take control of your breath. And they're really powerful as well.
Yeah,
So just
we'll talk about that a little bit later, actually, because I got that as one of the questions.
okay, yeah, great.
I wanted to sort of ask you because you've probably done so much work with the public and dealing with trauma and things like that. So why do you think teaching mindfulness is such an important thing in this climate, in this day and age? Like, why do you think we need it everywhere rather than just being a luxury?
Well, mindfulness is about awareness and being open and receptive to whatever your experience is, whether it's desirable or undesirable or neutral. So without mindfulness, if we just plow on life in automatic mode, which is quite often, most of us get up out of bed and we're just doing the automatic stuff, right? We don't even set intention for the day, and that might only need take 30 seconds to a minute to actually go, right, here I am, this is me, what do I want my day to look like, etc. So I think it's absolutely essential, absolutely hands down essential, because it's not just about connecting to the external world. Yes, connecting to the external world is so important, to be able to be more grounded and connected. But it's not just about that. It's actually about how we relate to our internal world as well. And our internal world is thoughts, feelings, sensations, and urges. And if we have the relationship with our mind where we just take our thoughts too seriously, and if we have the relationship with our emotions where emotions such as anxiety or guilt or sadness are emotions that we've been taught to struggle with, and we've been taught that you shouldn't actually have them because you should be happy. And if we've been taught that there's certain urges that we shouldn't have, or when we do have an urge, we just give into it every time, then our lives are not going to be the lives of of a life of meaning and purpose, and where we're open and receptive and able to enjoy it properly, right? Because
Yeah.
what we're doing is we're being pushed around by a bunch of conditioned reflexes, which
Mm.
is the internal world of what I'm talking about: thoughts, feelings, sensations, and urges.
Do
And
you
so,
think? I
sorry.
was going to say, do you think that because the world has got faster and faster, that's how we've become accustomed to just living our lives that way? Because I was listening to you about the morning, and I thought to myself, this morning I didn't even realize what my breakfast tasted like because I ate it so quickly, and I just got a shower to get ready for this. So it's interesting how we're not stopping. Do you think it's got to do with the speed of the world?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say that actually yeah, absolutely, hands down, goes along with it. Um, and yeah, um, I think the thing is for me is like, it's like you say, sometimes we just don't taste our breakfast. And I want to hold my hands up here because even though I teach mindfulness and I'm really passionate about it, I'm not the most mindful person throughout the day, right?
Mm,
In everyday life. But where it's really, really helped me is in not taking my thoughts so seriously, in coming to know that my mind is just like this. And we can go into this a little bit
yeah.
later if you like, but this is probably one of the most powerful things ever, because when we start to recognize that I am not my thoughts are parts of a program. My thoughts have been programmed into me from the external world, from other people, from the media. They are just programs that come up. This is quite groundbreaking, because what happens is that we think that we are our thoughts. And when our thoughts come up in a particular way, 80% of them, by the way, of the automatic thoughts that we have being kind of somewhat negative or pessimistic or unhelpful, right? If we believe that this is who I am, right, then life's not going to look too rosy, and we're not going to be as open and receptive and take advantage of some of the life enhancing opportunities that are that that are there for us to take, you know.
Yeah. Would you call that? You know how people sometimes say, "I'm in my head a lot," so they're not really living the life in that moment. They're actually in their head, and sometimes if you do an audit of that, you can spend a long time living in your head, listening to those stories or those thoughts, rather than being present.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, 95% of the time, you know, on average, that's kind of where we're at in our head. And there's a quote by Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you heard of
Yeah,
Eckhart Tolle with The Power
yeah,
of
yeah.
Now. He said, "It's not so much that you use your mind wrongly, you hardly use it at all. It
Wow.
uses you."
Mm. It dictates what you want to believe, your perception. So, can we
Yeah.
just take that thought and put it into teenage children or teenagers? You know, they're going through, I guess. Well, my observation is they're going through a bit of a hard time because of all the change. What do you think is some of the problems that teenagers are experiencing at the moment in regards to life, and how can mindfulness help them?
Yeah, well, I'd like to share something with you because I obviously in developing this app and going to the Act World conferences, and I presented at a couple of them, and I met Steve Hayes, and he's obviously the founder of ACT, but actually a lot more than that, because there's a whole body of science that underpins this. And you know, we're talking about like applied behavioral analysis, relational frame theory, functional contextualism. They're all kind of words that sound a bit out there, but this man has done so much. And if it wasn't for this body of science, ACT wouldn't be what it is. It wouldn't have stood the scientific scrutiny.
Mm,
And so, in regards to teenagers, he said something along the lines of this to me. He said, teenagers have seen more death, real and fictional, heard more judgments, and witnessed more suffering than many adults in past generations did in their lifetimes.
wow, I never thought of that. But it's true in a way, isn't
But
it?
yeah, yeah, because of, you know, you think about it, it's like, uh, again, there's, you know, I said that thing about a blessing and a curse, but you know, we've got technology, and there can be a massive blessing with this, and that's why I'm trying to, you know, with Act on it, and we're going to bring out this app and stuff. You know, there can be really good things with the technology that comes, but because we have to combat this, right? But because the problem is young people nowadays, what do we give them as a way of coping
Yeah,
in this
tablets.
media-driven world? Materialism,
Mm,
escapism, feel-goodism, like you know, medicine, pharmaceuticals. These are all band-aids. That all of those things that I've mentioned are these quick fix things that satisfy us and get us away from a feeling that we kind of don't want to experience in the short term. But in the longer term, it just programs us that we need more and more of that. And really, what we need is to cultivate modern minds for this crazy modern world that we're in.
mm. Are teenagers open to it? Like, are they? I know that some schools are starting to introduce it. When you see teenagers or work with them, are they open to doing the work?
I think, like, look, I actually work more with adults, even though I'm kind of doing this thing with teenagers. But from my experience, what you've got to do is you've got to kind of meet teens where they're at,
Right.
where their value system's at. You know, so for instance, if if you can have that kind of conversation about, oh, you know, has your mind been, how's your mind been lately, you know, they might be able to then, you know, relate with regards to what their struggles are with certain thoughts and things like that. And then if you can kind of go in there and give them some simple insights and some tools, then they're definitely going to be receptive to it.
Okay. So when we think of that, the tools and the mindfulness and the practice, what do you think is some of the obstacles that adults face? Like I've been doing mindfulness and meditation for about 15 years, and I remember there being certain obstacles about, oh my God, I can't do this, it's too hard, da da da. And then I pushed through and got through that. But what are some of the things that people are, hitting themselves against when it comes to actually doing the work? Because you described it really well. It's such an amazing tool, and it can change the way that you see your life. So why isn't everyone doing it?
Well, it depends on which lens you're kind of looking through, because look, the word mindfulness is huge, right? And it's a dodgy word from the start because it says like mindfulness, and it's actually nothing to do with having a full mind.
Mm,
It's nothing to do with being mindful, as the old dictionaries used to say. The newer dictionaries nowadays have changed their definition to it actually being about us um, being more open and receptive, whereas before it was like it's mindful is about being pensive in thought. But so mindfulness is a bit of a dodgy word for a start, but then it can also in some settings be this thing where it's like, oh well, you've got to lie down and close your eyes, or you've got to sit down and close your eyes. There's the two options, right?
mm,
And actually, um, we you can do mindfulness without meditation, right? So I mean, Russ Harris is known for kind of like saying it in that way, like mindfulness without meditation, um, and that means little tools, little tips that could take 10 to 15 seconds, you know, like a little strategy, for instance, that like when someone's aware of an unhelpful thought that they're having, they can just insert the sentence before that. So if they're thinking, I just can't do this, I'm not good enough, they just insert the sentence, I'm noticing the thought that I can't do this.
okay.
I'm noticing the thought that I'm not good enough. That's kind of like a little doorway into the experience of what mindfulness is like when there's more space for our thoughts and we're not taking them so seriously. So instead of our thoughts being like here and
Mm,
looking at the world from our thoughts, they're more out here,
yeah.
you know.
I mean, one of my favorite mindfulness exercises, which I do nearly once a week, is I go into the backyard and I watch ants.
Okay,
Like I
yeah,
just watch the ants, and like
yeah,
sometimes I find myself there for 2 hours, and I had no idea it was that long.
really.
Yeah,
2 hours,
yeah, 2 hours. I sort of learned.
wow.
I learned it at a meditation retreat, and I just really enjoyed it. Just watch because they carry things and they move around, they follow each other, so your mind just gets lost, and you
Yeah,
moment of time. I mean, I don't get the opportunity to do 2 hours all the time, but when I do, it's really blissful.
yeah, yeah.
Because this is predominantly a men's podcast, like what do you think are some of the obstacles for men in regards to learning mindfulness, and how can they overcome them? Because I know that there is a bit of a stigma. I hear it in some of my men's groups, and we run meditation classes in there, and sometimes people don't attend. Like it's free, but there's a stigma with it. So how can we get over that stigma, especially for men?
I think yeah, there is still a stigma, but it's things are definitely changing
Yeah,
pretty fast, right?
they are.
I know that in the corporate world, when they were bringing ACT, acceptance commitment therapy techniques, which ACT wouldn't be ACT without mindfulness. So you can't like just not have mindfulness without ACT. And I know that when they were training these CEOs, right, they actually dropped the word meditation and mindfulness. They just got rid of it
Yeah,
and would use awareness training and resilience training,
right.
right? So it's just about how we refrain it, because yeah, mindfulness, like I said, is a bit of a dodgy word. Like it's in the newer ACT books, it's actually not being used as much now. You could use other words like grounding practice, anchoring, centering, right?
Yeah, that's
All
the football, the Australian rules football. They're using mindfulness, but they're calling it grounding training.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, so and it's just it's also so much more accessible and relatable. So there's other words that we can use for that.
Mm,
There is a whole heap of resources out there. It's just kind of like finding the ones for us. But as things unfold, I mean, you've got apps like Insight Timer,
mm.
that is a phenomenal app that's got like 60,000 free tracks on. It's got teachers all over the world. I'm one of the teachers on there as well,
Okay,
actually.
cool.
And there's so many kind of like free resources
Mm,
from people that are interested in more of the spiritual side of things to right the other side of like psychology, neuroscience. It's got a whole spectrum of experience in there, and you can kind of select that.
mm.
So really, the reason people don't tend to do things, even if they're kind of interested in it, is one, it might be like that kind of misunderstanding thing, right? It's like, well, it doesn't have to be like sitting down with your eyes closed or whatever. Um, and so, yeah, it can be like a real misunderstanding.
Do you
And
think
it,
it's also connected to be? I mean, sometimes people connect as being like a hippie or being alternative, and they sort of think that's not them. They have this conception of what it's going to be, and then when they
yeah,
try it, they go, "Oh, wow, that was good," but they have this other thought in their mind that stops them from going down that path.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It can certainly have that, and that's where the misunderstanding is. And the other thing is, it's just our conceptions about like, um, it doesn't have to be for that. Like, it doesn't have to be for a long period of time. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
this thing that you have to do it for a long period of time. It could just be some simple kind of tips and things to help you get grounded and
Mm.
centered.
Do you think men also associate it to that it's not a masculine thing? Have you noticed, or I mean, I'm just putting that out there just now, but there's certain things that I know. I agree with you that the world is changing and men are definitely becoming more connected, but there are still there's a bit of stigma around the masculinity of it, and they sometimes associate it with a feminine thing. Like, have you heard that before?
I have, but I'm probably not the best person to speak to because in the where I work, like for instance at the Melbourne clinic, I don't really see that because um, like the majority of the programs that we offer for adults all have components of mindfulness in, and we actually don't have. It's just become the new norm,
Mm,
and with the way that kind of psychotherapy is going, um, you can't really get away from it.
yeah, uh,
However, that is in the realm of seeking mental health support.
yeah,
But yeah, look, I think you're right, and it is like that. But if people were to see it as like resilience training, in order for them to get grounded, to really get a good sense of um, what they want to be about in that day, what their longer term goals are, and if they were to have a ritual, just for like I said, just a few moments in the day, that would be a big transformation. There's a lot to be said about just having a ritual, even even actually if it doesn't involve like mindfulness as such, but just having that ritual where you just have a bit more of a quiet time to set your intention. There's something really powerful about it.
yeah. I mean, it's really good that you actually offer it as part of the program and people don't necessarily seek it. It's just part of it. So I really like that concept.
Yeah,
I mean, with a lot of my clients, they do struggle with the word time. Like they sort of say, I've got no time. And it's interesting when you do an audit on their day, they're just giving, 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 and they don't actually stop to do what they need to do. So
mm.
just as we wrap things up, do you want to just talk a little bit about what you believe would be some good observation techniques that people may take away? Just
So,
some simple things maybe.
okay, so some tips to do with and obviously because we're talking about like men's health here, and particularly I'm assuming like men that might not know much about mindfulness, right, and that might want just some like
Yeah,
takeaway
they
tips.
probably have an anxiety that's there in their life, and they don't. I'm noticing that a lot of the guys may not necessarily do anything about it. They talk about it, but they don't seek the help. So we start to introduce them to simple things like breathing and mindfulness and so on. So I just was wondering if you could maybe give us some simple things that they could try
Yeah,
to get started.
absolutely, hands down. So one of the most simple, probably one of the oldest spiritual teachings that there is, not that we even need to get caught up in that word spiritual, is exactly this. So Joe, as you're listening to me right now, you don't have to do it in a contrived way. If someone was sitting next to you, they wouldn't even know. And for the listeners at home, notice how you can hear what I'm saying. And what I want you to do is to actually just gently notice your breath, not in any contrived way, but just notice your breath. Notice how you breathe in and you breathe out. You might notice the temperature. You might notice just how it feels. And as I'm talking to you, what I want you to get a sense of is the fact that you are able to do this right in this moment as you can hear what I'm saying. You are able to do this and stay connected to your breath as you look at the screen and look around your room. You are able to connect to your breath. This is not an avoidance technique. It's not like a way of kind of going, oh, I can't cope with this situation. It's actually you are anchoring to the present moment. So, right now, as your listeners are listening, I'm hoping that they're staying with their breath as they're hearing what I'm saying, as they're looking around the room. And whilst you're anchored to your breath in this way, you are connected to the present moment. And like I said, it's not an avoidance technique because actually you're more connected. And you can do this when you're having a conversation with somebody. And when we kind of jump to the next thing we want to say without properly listening to that person, just go to your breath. If you're in a job interview and you're waiting in the waiting room, or you're getting the question when there's the interview panel in front of you, go to your breath because you are going to be able to take on board much more and be less in your head. It's when we're in our head that we avoid, right? And
Mm,
and and so it just becomes more organic. So I would say you can do that, and we can do that whenever. You don't have to be bored again.
yeah.
Next time you're on public transport and you kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do or whatever, just drop into that for a bit.
Yeah,
You can do
ignore
it for
ignore your phone and just do that for a little bit. I've gone really deep relaxed. I've gone all floppy doing it
well, there
because
you go.
I
Yeah,
relax quite easily.
yeah.
Ruben, thank you so much for being on the show. You're such an abundance of knowledge, and you explain things really, really well. So thank you. Hopefully, we can maybe have you on the show again if you're up for
I'd
it.
I'd love to. And just one more thing, and I did mention it before because you asked for about like
Yep.
these observations. The other one is this is a really cool one, and I said it before. I'll just say it again because it's so important. The next time you do get caught up in a negative thought, just put that sentence in front of it. I'm noticing the thought that I can't do this, or I'm noticing the thought that X, whatever it is. So two little things, and this is like mindfulness without the meditation, right? It's just that, and then going with that breathing, and enjoy the meaningful connection you have, because when you're with your breath in that way, you're going to find the people you connect with, or the things you connect with, or the animals you connect with. You'll find it more enjoyable by just doing that.
Fantastic. Just for the listeners, I'll be putting all the information that Ruben has down below. So when you look at this clip, you'll be able to scroll down and just click on all those things. I'll find all the techniques and put them in there. Ruben, thank you so much. Again, hopefully we can have you on again, and we really appreciate it.
I'd love to be on again, Joe, and thank you so much. And yeah, good luck to all you listeners as well. And yeah, keep
Thank
keep
you.
keep going. Yeah, cheers.
You've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast. So the new podcast will be out on Monday and Thursday. Now, don't forget to subscribe. So click down below and click like to let us know that you've enjoyed the podcast. Okay, guys, have a good week. We'll see you soon. Bye.